Okay, good morning, everyone, depending on where you are, or maybe good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Pan-European Workshop on Charting the Roadmap for Autonomous Vehicles in European Logistics. I will be your moderator today. My name is Loa Shimi. I work as Senior Innovation Manager at INIDE. This is a joint activity by three projects, European-funded projects, MODI, PoDIUM, and Award, and it's supported by ALICE, CCAM Association, and PAVE Europe. Just some rules for the workshop before we start. The session will be recorded in case you wish to have a look afterwards. A link to the recorded webinar and PDF presentation will be shared with participants throughout email. And please keep your microphone muted when the meeting starts and your camera is off if you're not speaking. And you can introduce yourself when entering the meeting. So you do a test that is true or valid for the interactive sessions, just to make sure that you can raise your voice and also participate. And please share your questions to the speakers, which will be the case for the first session, and in the chat box. And you're also welcome to share thoughts, suggestions, or relevant information on the subject in case you have any. And we will be utilizing Metro Retro, as I was mentioning at the beginning, for the interactive collaborative sessions. So please make sure to familiarize yourself with the platform. The link is shared by my colleague Luca in the chat box. Please click on the link while we are presenting the three projects. Make sure that you do the necessary steps required to access and also use the platform. So without further ado, I will start the first session, which is a short 10-minute presentation of each one of the projects participating in today's workshop, namely Award, MODI, and PoDIUM, as the order that I just mentioned. So I give the floor to Julian, the project coordinator of Award. Julian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. Just a second. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Great. So good morning, everyone. I'm Julian Collier from EasyMI. So I'm project manager in general and project coordinator of the Award project. Award. Okay, sorry. So Award is part of Edge 2020 framework, which aims to digitalize and transform the European industry and services into automated road transport, and to get efficient and safe, connected and automated heavy-duty vehicles in rail logistics operation. So Award means all-weather autonomous rail logistics operations and demonstrations that I will explain a bit later. So as explained, I'm the project coordinator, and I work with currently with 28 skilled partners in many topics: technical, business, analysis, and OEMs, and so on. So just doing this. So in the Award project, we see it's one of the first steps to automate logistics transportation, no matter where I would say the conditions are, so rain, snow, and so on. So the aim of this project is to integrate many technologies such as sensors, teleoperation, fleet management system into 4 vehicles. So yard container tractor in ports, which is Terberg, a soft body container mover from Camag, a airport tow tractor from TLD, and 1 forklift truck. So we implement the system into the vehicle. We test it in EasyMile test center, but also in other test center. I will show you some videos, quick videos later, and we deploy and demonstrate operations in DFDS, which is a port in Vlaardingen, next to Rotterdam, to I would say manage trailers there. hub-to-hub, so from Rotax-DB Schenker in Austria, which is currently done to move a swap body container from A to B, so from Rotax-DB Schenker, from DB Schenker to Rotax, to manage also trailers in the airport in operations, and also to load and load pallets in arbitrary area. So by validate a system of system, here is a quick video of vehicle. I'll show you quickly. Does it work? It doesn't work, does it? It's stuck. Anyway, so here is a video of the Camac vehicle tested in the test center in Digitrans Proving Ground in St. Valentin in Austria. So the aim is to replicate, I would say, and simulate operations in a hub-to-hub under the rain. It is a rain tunnel here, and some pallets, and to check if the vehicle stops or what is the behavior to validate the system of system. And then we deploy the vehicle here. So here is the route of the vehicle in Rotax DB Schenker and transmission. So it is a route based on closed areas, the sites, DB Schenker Rotax, but also the public road. And here in the public road, there was communication with the CFTS protocol, which is a traffic light. So hope it works this one. So you can see here the vehicle running here in the yellow area. So this is a Camac vehicle equipped with a swap body container. And it's arriving here and coming to DB Schenker side. So now half of the demonstration are done. We analysis are ongoing, and we I would say the airport and the forklift use cases are ongoing, and we'll get you in touch later about what is the progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian. Now I will like to give the floor. So as you have seen, award actually started as one of the pan-European funded projects or flagship projects, where the focus is on harsh weather condition, as it was one of the challenges back then. And the 4 use cases that award covers mainly start from confined areas, going more towards a mixed traffic and public area, which is the up-to-up case. MoDI, which is the sister project of award, it starts actually taking the challenge from the mixed traffic outdoor use cases, and then actually broadens the scope of the use of autonomous vehicles and logistics. So Ragnhild, and the floor is yours.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Lua. I'm Ragnhild Wahl, and I'm the coordinator of MoDI, and on a daily basis, I work at ITS Norway, which is a Norwegian membership association within ITS. Yes. As for the award project, we are in MoDI, we are also focusing on logistics and freight transport. And Julian has given a good overview of the award approach and their use cases. But in MoDI, we are adding even more complexity by focusing on the long distance transport on public roads. And we work along 3 axes. It's identifying and understanding the barriers. It's focusing on the business models. And finally, of course, we are demonstrating a selection of challenges in the use cases. We are covering, as I said, the public roads, and we are covering the logistics corridor from Rotterdam in Netherlands to Oslo in Norway. And this specific route has been selected out of several considerations. This is an important heavy freight corridor. There are huge volumes landing in Rotterdam on cargo ships to be transported on the roads toward the Nordic countries. We have planned a route through Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, because they are forerunners regarding using new technologies, and we expect these countries to be among the first in Europe to introduce fully automated driving on public roads. And lastly, this corridor is a part of the TEN-T network. We will use the CCAM corridor to assess the infrastructure readiness for automated driving. And along this corridor, we will cross 4 national borders, and each of these are representing transition points. And on the way up to Norway, we have selected 4 local use cases, each of them representing additional transitions to be faced. And the journey starts at the Rotterdam Harbour APM terminal. And here we will focus on the operational aspects in the terminal and the dryage to the nearby warehouse. Driving on to Hamburg, we exit the motorway and continue on urban roads towards the port. And here we will also face additional challenges with increased complexity in the traffic, as we are introducing vulnerable road users in the whole picture. We will then pass to Denmark before accessing Gothenburg. And here we introduce hub-to-hub challenges and terminal functions like loading, unloading, and automated charging. Passing on to Norway, we introduce specific challenges related to leaving a European Union country to a non-European country. And after that, we will drive on public roads through a complex traffic environment before entering the port of Moss in Norway. And here we will have the possibility to interact with another ongoing project with automated sea drones. And finally, the journey ends in Oslo. And all of these use cases represents pieces of the challenges in long-haul freight transport. They all represent different transitions, whether it's border crossing, exiting a motorway, or arriving at the confined terminal areas. So you can see there are some overlapping or similar activities as in award, but the main focus is the long distance. And when we are talking about long distance transport, we are facing a lot of the same challenges as in the local use cases, but we are adding a few more. For example, for the automated vehicles to cross the national border, we need to deal with specific technological barriers. And these could be related to interoperability, the connectivity, and map reference models. And to take the mobile coverage as an example, we see that in projects, the technology has proven okay in research projects, but the digital infrastructure is not sufficiently developed. And we have tested this, a preliminary test to document and register what is the actual situation. And we see that it is a challenge that the mobile network operators are not motivated to fix or deploy border crossing solutions. And this is because the borders are typically in less populated areas with fewer customers. And therefore, they don't have the initiatives or incentives to make such development. And to do that, you need cooperation between the network operators and the countries. And if you don't have the continuous connectivity across the border, then of course you are not able to drive automated on long haul distances. So this is a very crucial part to solve. Furthermore, different countries are using different map reference models, and they have different quality of the road databases. And this is also challenges we need to cope when driving on these long distances. And right now we are working on identifying and mapping specific pain points along the motorway corridor. And we can mention traffic signs and road markings as good examples. They vary among the involved countries, but they also involve, sorry for my bad pronunciation this morning, they also represent or involves variation within each country. And that's typically related to traffic roadworks or incidents, accidents, etc. And in such situations, we see that there are many conflicting road markings and use of signs which deviate from the formal ones. And the automated vehicle need to know how to interpret these and take adequate actions. And this picture is an example from Norway in the roadwork section, and you can see there's not easy for an automated vehicle to navigate. Actually, it's quite difficult for manual drivers also to navigate in this environment. We have a total of 34 partners. It's a quite big project. I think the total budget is approximately the same as in the award. And 3 of our partners are providing battery electric vehicles. And this is DAF, Volvo, and enlightening. And you recognize the DAF and Volvo kind of vehicles. They are among those we are seeing on the roads every day. But the enlightening vehicle is quite new, typical vehicle, which is driverless by design. There's no room for a driver, and these could be remotely operated. So to close the presentation, and also it's a kind of introduction to expectations to this workshop. We are now discussing the use cases. We are developing them further, and we have focused on making these truly useful. To take the logistics partner and the technology providers and the road administration authorities and the researchers, of course, talking together, solving the challenges together, and seeing the challenges at the same point. And one example is to decide whether the support of automated driving should be on the vehicle side or in the infrastructure side. So for the vehicle providers and the road authorities to understand the boundaries and the challenges in each of the others' environment is crucial. So right now we have a focus on this kind of dialogue and mapping the pain points. And I think that was a short trip through the MODI project, and we are very happy that we could depend on the results from award, especially in the user requirement side. So I really look forward to this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really insightful. So we see that we actually go from harsh weather condition and the use cases, the 4 use cases of award, to a more complex situation in MODI where long distance is actually objective. And we see also some challenges. Of course, it's not always easy to make automation happen. And some of the challenges that MODI actually is trying to answer or address already is also the focus of the PoDIUM project, which is more technical, more focused on challenges such as connectivity that Ragnhild was mentioning. Lazarus, I would like to give the floor to you to present the PoDIUM project.
Thanks, Loha. So this is Lazarus Gedzikis. I'm the day-to-day coordinator of the project PoDIUM. And PoDIUM, as Loha mentioned, is moving a bit in a different direction, focusing on PDI enhancements to support any type of transport application. So we're not focused only on logistics. We're not focused on logistics, actually, but we're focused on the PDI enhancement and technology development necessary to improve autonomous driving and CCAM services in general. Okay, So moving on, a quick overview of what we will be discussing. We'll be discussing a bit the scope of the PoDIUM project based on the requirements analysis, the architecture that we came up with, and the functional view of the architecture, and then trying to see how the developments of PoDIUM could benefit transportation logistics. We try to identify the main directions that would be of interest to the logistics community. So moving on to the next slide. The scope of PoDIUM is that we're trying to enable connected and cooperative automated mobility in real traffic conditions, and this is an important part. And for this purpose, the demonstration is planned to happen in real conditions in different scenarios, as shown in the pictures, ranging from shuttles crossing borders to a T-junction in the city of Ulm in Germany, or real emergency situations or normal operations in cities like Turin, depicted here, and also Barcelona. So in order to enable this connected and cooperative automated mobility, we have identified in the PoDIUM project that there are certain advancements that need to happen to realize this vision. And the first and an important aspect, probably the most important one, is the need to integrate and support multi-access edge computing as an enabler of new use cases in the SICAM domain. The second part that we have identified, the objective that we have identified, is that data from multiple sources needs to be combined in order to enhance the perception of the environment from within the vehicle, but also from outside the vehicle, to have new services building on the vision of digital twins. We have also identified that the current structure of CITS messages is good enough, but necessary extensions are needed to enable the envisioned SICAM use cases. And an orthogonal activity that the project takes is that all these are of no real value if we cannot ensure trust, truthfulness, and software integrity. In this sense, we want to achieve end-to-end that what is being exchanged through the system is safe to be taken into consideration and is coming from the entities that are qualified to provide such information. Last but not least, since we're not focusing on logistics, but we're mainly on urban areas, the integration of vulnerable road users is part of the project, and their detection, their protection, and depiction on the overall perception systems of each component is very important for the project, for the achievement of the project objectives. So in the end, we will be demonstrating all these developments in 3 living labs, one in Spain, one in Italy, and one in Germany, with a total of 5 use cases. And telecommunication is an important aspect with specific advancements focused by PoDIUM, so we are considering all types of communications. In the end, what PoDIUM will have impact on, we expect to impact both the physical and the digital world, ranging from all the entities, the known entities of SICAM, infrastructure, RSUs, OBUs, up to the digital world, including the perception, the messaging, the digital twins, etc. Moving on, based on the analysis of requirements that we had in the PoDIUM, we have derived the PoDIUM architecture. And this is a 3-layer architecture that ranges from the road level system to the edge and up to the central cloud. And as an exercise and as a blueprint for future research and deployments, what we have managed to achieve is a common reference architecture that can accommodate all the advanced use cases that PoDIUM targets. And the main point is that this architecture accommodates all different types of communication technologies, as it is depicted here, with multi-connectivity being also part of what we demonstrate. Hybrid data management, where the data is located and processed, is flexible, ranging from the vehicle up to the central cloud. We support a diverse set of services, platform services, CICAM services, and we have these orthogonal activities that spans all layers of the architecture, which is about software integrity. Moving on, we will identify the functional aspects of the CICAM system, envisioned CICAM PoDIUM system, and how these interact. And this gave birth to what we call a functional view of the PoDIUM system. And the important parts is that we have the services that we mentioned before. We have the sensors and actuators, which are the main sources of information, and we have also the road users. So the lower parts are the usual players in this ecosystem. The important thing to focus on are the platform services. And here we have at the central point, the digital twin, which collects all the information and recreates the world. We have the traffic management and cooperative maneuver planning, which is essentially putting the decision making or recommendation outside the vehicle itself and making it a kind of a central decision to be made. Risk manager, a system that based on what is the enhanced perception of the world can provide to all the users of the system risk indications, timely risk indications. Software integrity, which is to ensure that none of the components of the system have been tampered and they are operating as designed. And last but not least, the glue of all these things, which we call CITS methods and user handling, which is the collection, the necessary component for the collection of all the data from the road that will be fed to the rest of the modules of the system. And this here, essentially what it contains is all the communication parts and processing parts for providing the information to the digital twin. And closing, what would be, I think, the most interesting part, and for future reference, is how we could expect that PoDIUM itself, although not targeting transportation itself and logistics, could help in the developments with its developments in this field. And the first is that through automated driving, that is to be enhanced with PoDIUM, with the integration of MEC, we can increase road safety, avoiding human errors and extending the perception of the world from what we have at an individual vehicle or road user side. We can reduce traffic congestion and support the vision of low carbon and more efficient transport. First of all, because we have an increased awareness of the environment via the digital twins, and we can schedule and perform traffic management decisions at the central point with a better view of what is happening and optimize the flows, the traffic flows. Then an important aspect is that we can enhance urban mobility, but also accessibility via automated driving systems and on-demand multimodal transport. And this is that we can enable this by enhancing the trust that people, individuals, and also users, any type of user of the system, has to the automation via real-life validation. Last but not least, having this better view of the physical and through the physical and digital enhancements of the infrastructure, we can enhance real-time tracking, monitoring, and coordination of goods in transit. And this is because our system, in the end, creates a holistic view of the world that allows source-to-destination planning of any type of transfer. This is being humans or goods, people or goods. So that's all from my side. Thank you. And the stage goes back to Loha.
Thank you so much, Lazaros. So also I would like to thank other speakers. So the presentation session is done. Now I would like everyone to come back to the meeting room with a lot of energy, and hopefully we have lots of interactions for the first interactive sessions that we have planned for today. Since it's a workshop, I really encourage everyone actually to unmute yourself once you're in the breakout sessions. And also try to make sure that your voice is heard. Try to actually create the sticky notes. Don't be passive. And hopefully we get lots of insights from you that will help us later on to write a really insightful report that, as the name of the workshop says, defines the roadmap for the use of autonomous vehicles and logistics. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly share my screen in order to explain a little bit what will be the first interactive session of today. Hopefully you see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Now my screen is frozen, so let's try again. Technology. So hopefully you can still hear me. I just see a broken and frozen screen in front of me.
We still can hear you, Laura.
That's nice. So I'm facing some technical issues. So hopefully. While I'm trying to solve this technical issue, maybe someone, maybe Luca, can you hear me?
Yes, Laura.
Maybe you can share the screen quickly, the Metro Retro board. So for the first interactive session, what we have planned is actually to define, we have 3 timelines as you hopefully will see in a few seconds once I do not see the screen, so my apologies. I don't really see actually what is on the screen because my screen is frozen. So there will be 3 timelines from 1 to 5 years, from 5 to 10 years, and from 10 to 15 years. You will be divided in 3 breakout sessions. Now I am doubting actually how I will be able to do it if my screen is frozen. And then based on the room that you are, you will be focusing on either 1 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years, or actually 10 to 15 years timeline. What will be the task? The task will be actually to brainstorm some use cases, promising use cases, realistic use cases of CICAM in logistics. For example, the first room will be focusing on the 1 to 5 years timeline. You will be discussing what are some use cases of CICAM in logistics during this timeline. Try to be realistic, try to also highlight some problems, challenges, issues that we might face while implementing those use cases. The moderators, we will have 3 moderators, 1 for each room. Hopefully, still we have with ourselves Mats from DFDS, who will be moderating the 1 to 5 years timeline. Then we have got with us Olga from IRU, who will be moderating the 5 to 10 years. Sorry, from 10 to 15 years, the long-term vision. And then we have with ourselves Matthias from FHO, who will be moderating the 5 to 10 years timeline. So the moderators will be actually guiding you throughout the sessions. We will have 15 minutes for the brainstorming session. Then you have to come back. I will close the breakout sessions. You will come back to the main room. The moderators will explain the use cases that you came up with, and then we will have 5 minutes of voting per use case. So that is the idea for the first interactive session. The time that we have actually in mind for this session is 45 minutes. So hopefully we will be able to do this in such a short period of time. Now, the challenge I'm facing is more technical. I cannot actually see the screen. Let me see if my colleague can help me. Luca, can you see the screen, and are you allowed to?
I'm sharing the screen.
Are you allowed to do breakout rooms in Teams?
So
quickly check.
I will open the rooms.
Perfect. Can you see the rooms that I created? There were 3 rooms.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Then once my colleague opened the rooms, then you will see a message on your screen, which asks you if you want to join the room. So please click that message or button, and you will automatically be directed to the room that you're assigned to. So see you in 15 minutes, and I leave you to good hands, Matthias, Mads, and Olger. Let's have a productive session. Main room again. Okay, you're having people back to the main room. Few more seconds.
Laura, we had an issue in our breakout room that there was a limited number of guests in the Metro Retro, so not everybody was able to join.
We as well.
Yeah, it was the same for us. It seems that once there are too many people, 40, around 40, 50 people, it seems that Metro Retro actually cannot. Yeah, I mean, anyways, so what we did in our room was actually like talking and writing, you know, in
Yes.
chat, and someone was copy pasting them. Still, we have the most important ideas in the board on the board. So hopefully you did something similar. So now I quickly give the floor to Matthias, Olga, and Mads to give us a short summary of what you discussed in your rooms. I'm going to share my screen so that everyone can see the 3 timelines, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. While Matthias, no, Mads is actually the first one. While Mads is explaining some of the use cases you discussed in your room, other people actually, you can vote on the use case that you like the most. You have 3 votes. So you can cast all the votes in one use case, or you can actually cast them on different use cases. I prefer rather to actually cast 1 vote per timeline, since you have 3 votes. So 1 vote per use case per timeline. But the decision is yours. If you love a use case and you really, really want that use case to happen, you can cast your vote on that use case. So Mads?
Yes, hello everybody. We had some issues getting everybody into Metro Retro, so we also did we had an open discussion in our meeting room. And the discussion sort of went on as several kinds of levels. One about use cases, talking about terminal dryads, also from the MODI project, how we could transfer knowledge from the more restricted microscopic, the smaller ODDs in warehouses, and how we could actually do some learnings into public roads. We had some sticky notes on logistics networks, on some of the technical use cases that needed to be solved for the automation in logistics areas. Then there was a comment that people should be aware that remote pilot operation is actually already possible. Then we also transferred into a discussion on some of the acceptance factors that before automation really kicks in, the public awareness and acceptance of automated systems should be increased. And then also that we need a unified regulations covering global regulations, not only on the automation levels, but also, for example, the ISPS codes in the ports were specifically mentioned. Yeah, I think that was the short recap of the discussion we had.
Perfect. So now let's...
One final comment, sorry, Loha. We had one that rail freight would most likely also be a use case by 2027.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Then you can cast your votes if you wish. Here you can actually, if you see, for the ones who could join the board, you hopefully see also the votes that you have got. So you go to the sticky note and you can cast your vote on the sticky note that you like the most. So now I give the floor to Matthias.
So thank you, Loha. Actually, we had similar issues with Teams. We all dropped out of the room. So we had some minutes for joining back again. And looking at the time frame of 5 to 10 years, what you see on the very left, so on 5 years, self-driving forklifts in indoor and outdoor situations, that's something we considered as realistic. We know that indoor, that's something very common in the meantime, but also putting them outdoor and also under rather moderate and harsh weather conditions, that's still a challenge today, but might be solved in 5 years from our point of view. And then we came to discussion talking about trucks on highways. So there, the discussion was that actually driving autonomously on highways, that's something we put in the brackets moderate weather, which we would consider possible under moderate weather conditions in the next years. I mean, if you have a look at the US currently, like Too Simple or Kodiak Robotics, others, they are already operating autonomous trucks on highways in the US, but here we have ideal situations regarding the weather. But actually, in addition to driving autonomously, we had the discussion related to really docking the trailer to the truck in an automated way. So that's something we considered necessary, as well as when you have this automatic connection of the two parts, the loading and unloading in an automated way. Additionally to this long haul automation, rather on the right-hand side, you see this delivery between, what did we write? City hubs. So where we said, okay, we are aware that the traffic situation are much more complex in cities, but we could imagine that on fixed routes in cities, including vulnerable road users, for example, under moderate weather conditions, that there will be city hubs connected by autonomous vehicles. That was mainly our discussions. We did not find the time to vote since I think the majority did not have access to the tool anymore. And I was trying to write down what we were discussing. What else? We have two cards on the top. So the CINEA integrated with traffic management, which was an addition. And we did not find the time to discuss the dry edge cards in the room. So that's basically it, I think.
It is interesting, quite interesting actually, to see how, you know, like people can have similar ideas for use cases, but for different timelines, because we have terminal dryage here, year 4, 5, and then in your room, actually dryage just starts also year 5, 6, so kind of the timeline. But I also see, Matthias, that in your room, you're quite conservative in the sense that you see more like moderated weather, right? Like at the end, like in 10 years happening. But
so rather pessimistic than optimistic, you could say.
I would say conservative. And then we also see in room 1 hub-to-hub logistic networks, and already they actually start talking about some kind of mixed traffic, at least if not public area. But in the first timeline, people were a little bit more ambitious. And then your room 5 to 10, a little bit more conservative. But now let's quickly go to Olga's room, 10 to 5 here, the dreamer's room. What are the use cases? Olga?
Yep, thank you, Loha. Again, I think even the dreamers were relatively restrained in their visioning here. So no one is talking about autonomous aerial transport of any kind. We're staying well grounded. Starting on the left-hand side with type approval expected for type 2 vehicles, and then all the way on the right-hand side, ending up with things like automated garbage collection and L4 last mile delivery vehicles in urban and peri-urban environments. So there is a bit of I guess redundancy, if you will, or repetition, in the sense that we are talking a lot about automated vocational vehicles, and that may include things like automated road cleaning vehicles. I mentioned the automated garbage collection, and then other vocational vehicles for municipal services. So we're staying in. So we're moving more and more into. It looks like we're moving more into the more complex urban environments here. On the one hand, and then on the other hand, we also have an expansion of the theme of freight transport, in the sense that we're looking at more flexible routes and for both people and goods. So perhaps that's an expansion of the geography that autonomous vehicles will move into. And then also looking into some of the hubs. I think this comment was from Yoni Salo, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He was talking about terminal logistics, going first to parcel logistics and last mile logistics. So again, I think if you try to reconcile these 3 boards, you'll see, you know, for me at least, the dominant theme is a bit of uncertainty, and not exactly something that I would call linear progress, which is expected. So I'm very grateful to the contributors who've generated ideas, and I look forward to seeing how we as a group can move this forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. By the way, still, I mean, if you come up with more ideas, just write the timeline and quickly write them in the chat box, and we will later on copy paste them on the board on your behalf. Also, if you have technical issues, the same applies. Just write them in the chat message box, the timeline first, and then the use case. And later on, we will actually put them on the board. So now if people got actually time to vote, of course, if you're in the room and if you can actually vote. Otherwise, also do use the chat box or message box to raise your voice and mute yourself, by the way, if you want to talk. Otherwise, just write the sticky note or the use case that you like the most in the message box. And then later on, we will actually count this as one vote on your behalf. So let's maybe give 1 to 2 more minutes for everyone to vote on the sticky notes, but just to wrap up a little bit, I see actually in the research projects, we start with port, airport, up to hub and award, and hub to hub actually is the kind of the connection point, port and up to hub with MODI and award. And I see that people actually have been talking about up to hub case from different angles and different timelines. I see this repetitive sticky note in different places. But I also see, or at least hear from moderators, some comments on moving from last mile or moving from first mile delivery more to last mile delivery, from confined use cases or confined area use cases, as it kind of appears in the 1 to 5 year timeline, AGVs, more maybe in indoor as it is right now, and moving more towards outdoor, and then taking into consideration different aspects such as fleet management, traffic management, acceptance, then moving more towards outdoor in 5 to 10 years. As it starts with self-driving forklift, not only for indoor but outdoor, taking into consideration the weather condition. Here in the last 10 years, actually, the last sticky note says moderate weather. Still, it's not harsh weather. So in the 10 years, hopefully, all these technical issues are tackled, and we see more acceptance, hopefully, with the usage of AVs, more for municipality use cases, grocery delivery, cleaning services, mainly for roads. And what else do we have here? Just quickly, garbage collection, etc. So thank you so much for your inputs, really insightful. Though I see still, yeah, there is, as Olga was saying, uncertainty in the sense that, of course, people can be more optimistic, pessimistic, and that's quite fine. And that's why we have this variety of use cases here. Now, I would like to quickly actually take you through the second session, which will be, of course, done also in 3 separate rooms, but this time we have 40 minutes. You will not come back to the main room. The whole discussion and brainstorming will be done in the room that you will be in. As you see, there are 3 links. Luca, please, can you also copy paste the links to the chat? Now we want you actually to select the room that you would like to join. Depending on the interests and expertise that you have, we have 3 rooms: port, airport, hub to hub, and warehouse room, where we will be talking about the vision statement and the vision and perception that you have for this specific use case. There will be 3 moderators for each room. We will start with a short presentation of the use case. Then you will be instructed to actually towards more the vision canvas, where you can see on the upper side the vision of ports, airports, and hub to hub, with also the DEMS related to the vision that's already defined. And then you will brainstorm a little bit on the supports, challenges, and bold steps for each one of the cases. The moderators will instruct you further in your rooms. Please, if you have already received the links to the rooms, do join the rooms using the links that you can see in the chat box in the main room. And of course, you have the link to the main room. Once the session is finished in 40 minutes, I will put the timer on the board so that you can check, or at least moderators can check. I will hopefully, actually, I think it doesn't allow me to put 40 minutes exactly, but I will be actually extending 10 to 10 minutes so that you can actually see how much time is left. Once the discussion is finished, we will come back to the main room to proceed with the 3rd session. Any questions so far for me before we jump to the rooms? No questions? Then let's see if we have the rooms already in the chat box. Yes, you have here the port meeting and the hub to hub, the second one, and the first one is the link to the airport meeting. Just quickly click on the room that you like the most, or that you can contribute, you believe you can contribute the most. You will be joining another room where you will do the workshop, a specific workshop to that use case in that room. For the ones still in the main room, please go to the chat box, see the link to the room, scroll up if you cannot see the link to the room that you're interested the most. The first one here, the link is to the airport meeting room. The second one, hub to hub meeting room or the logistic warehouse meeting room. And the third one is the port. Eva, the one, hopefully you found it, the one related to the warehouse is hub to hub, the second link. This one. So Diana, Andreas. Do we have, so let's maybe wait one more minute for everyone to join. Please share the link to the main room in the room that you have been, so that everyone is aware that now we should be back to the main room, where we will be continuing with what we have in the agenda. So while everyone is joining, I will try to share my screen. So the fourth session is now, hopefully after all the discussions that you had in separate rooms about, of course, we started with the use cases, supporter challenges, bold steps that needs to be taken in order to achieve the vision for different use cases, mainly the three use cases that you were actually involved in, port, airport, and hub to hub. Now we are in the main room. Hopefully most of you are in the main room, where we will be discussing some recommendations for the European Union, what needs to be done next. We have divided the areas of recommendation into 5 areas. Here you can see actually, I will zoom in later on. The first area is regulation, what needs to be done when it comes to regulation. The second one is raising awareness. What should the European Union do in order to raise awareness? The third pillar is standardization. What needs to be done in the standardization area. The fourth one is infrastructure, and the fifth one is others. So if your recommendation is not related to the 4 previous pillars or areas, then you put it in others, and hopefully through discussions, we group them together and we create new areas. So we start with the first part. So here, everyone actually in the room can participate. The ones who are already having access to the Metro Retro board, please create your sticky notes directly in the Metro Retro board. And once your sticky note is finished, you can raise your hand and then unmute yourself to discuss what you have written, or otherwise I will go through each one of the people in the room and in the Metro Retro, highlight the sticky notes you have got, and we discuss them. If you don't have access to the Metro Retro, which is the case for some people who joined later on, and the number of people on the number of participants were already reached and you could not access the Metro Retro, please write them in the chat box as you did during the workshop. And I will, or my colleague Luca will try to copy paste them as a sticky note in the board. So I will try with the first one. Do feel free. I do understand there are people with different actually expertise in different areas. Not everyone might be expert in regulation and nor maybe standards. Do actually focus on the areas that you feel more experience, or where you actually have more opinion, or you have recommendations in mind for the EU. Try to write them. If you're writing in the chat box, please first write standardization or raising awareness or regulation as the them, and then your recommendation, so that we know actually where to put the sticky note. If you have access to the board, then create the sticky note yourself. So I'm going to quickly go through the first area, which is regulation. Someone wants to actually unmute yourself and tell us what needs to be done by the European Commission regarding regulation in order to enable adoption of autonomous vehicles and logistics. What are we talked about challenges in different rooms, and I'm sure one of the challenges that was highlighted should or might be regulation. Then what is our suggestion? What is our recommendation to the EU? I see someone already written something. One recommendation is here: establish clear, harmonized regulation for the deployment and operation of connected and automated mobility. CCAM technologies across. I think the message was big and it didn't fit. Anyone else who would like to unmute yourself and tell us?
Hi.
Hi.
This is Jouni Salo.
Yes.
So I would like to add that if the European Union or the Europe would be able to highlight the interoperability between the brands, that there is no general manufacturer that would be able to make proprietary stuff. So regulations regarding the standardization and the interoperability would be a key. And I think we have seen this between the European and Apple.
Perfect. So it goes interoperability. Then I will put a sticky note also in the standardization. How you define this as sticky note, or what would be a phrase to say what kind of standards we have to define? So that,
well, if I can interrupt, I would advocate for a standardization issue to be addressed both in the regulation section, because that's the broadest possible heading. But then the more specific we get with it, then it can go into the standards box, but also into the infrastructure box. Because when we're talking about standardization here, we're not just talking about things like the chargers or the let's say sensors or things like that. But also perhaps one issue that has come up in different projects are things like road markings and traffic signs and so forth. So I think as a general comment, and I've mentioned this before in my breakout group earlier, a lot of these categories that we've created here are quite permeable and allow for some redundancies across them. So this is not, we're not trying to cram things into just one box necessarily.
Exactly, Olga. You're completely right. I mean, these are the areas that probably we have identified as some of the areas that most actually entities are with challenges when it comes to deployment. We have talked about the standards. Modi was talking about some challenges that they are highlighting in the project, and standardization of road marks was one of the issues they had, which I actually put under standardization. So if we kind of narrow down a little bit what exactly we mean by standardization, maybe chargers, Olga, you mentioned, but then as a broader area, of course, regulation is connected to standardization. So of course there will be some redundancies. So I write here standardization of road marks, and also standardization of standardization maybe as a broader infrastructure.
Yes, a broader instruction, and I think my point was to standardization of, let's say, connectivity and remote operations and autonomy related operations.
A standardization of connectivity and, can you repeat it again? A standardization of connectivity and remote operation?
Yeah, remote operations, remote driving, and so forth. And then one example would be, for example, autonomous bus depots, where the buses are delivered with charging systems, and I think tomorrow also will be delivered with autonomous operation systems. So that is kind of like a hindrance to multi-brand fleets, for example.
By the way, one of the challenges we are facing with an award is actually teleoperation. Do you believe there should be some regulation regarding teleoperation which allows teleoperation? And if yes, what would be actually recommendation when it comes to regulating teleoperation?
The interfaces between the vehicle and the teleoperation side. Again, the same thing, that the teleoperations or remote operations should be, let's say, done in a standard way, which would also generate the operational safety that is based on, let's say, standard or regulation.
What else? I don't see lots of people in the board, so do create your notes. I see some sticky notes when it comes to raising awareness. Let's see who is. Guillermo. Clear communication strategy. Do you want to elaborate on this?
Yeah, sure. I think that it's important to create, like on a European level, a narrative that helps people to understand what are the advantages and perhaps the risks involved in the development of autonomous driving technologies. So, and I think this is a task that should be coordinated on a high level, and then of course scaled down so that also individual entities have a bit of a clear picture of what kind of narrative the European Union is trying to convey. So yeah, that would be my thing. And yeah, maybe that also in a way goes hand in hand with also, yeah, maybe not necessarily regulation, but I think it's important, like, you know, that people understand how to interact with, for instance, automated vehicles, so that, you know, this reduces the risk for accidents. I mean, I'm not sure if that falls in the category regulation, but maybe, yeah, something in between concerning the mixed use of roads, for instance.
I've put it more on raising awareness, like saying actually make people understand how to interact with EVs. By the way, we also see that in EU right now, for example, level 4 automation is not allowed in most areas or most. So what, is there any recommendation on this? I heard some people actually saying one of the challenges is that we cannot do actually even pilots, in some or at least like engaging with negotiation processes with local administration sometimes is time consuming. Anything that you want to suggest regarding this?
Well, there is a comment in the chat that already speaks to this a little bit. I think Lucia Sanz wrote, promote regulatory sandboxes for CICAM across Europe to test different approaches and then regulate based on the evidence that they produce.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
also,
this,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I would maybe add that the autonomous or automated operation should be split in gated areas and public roads. So that would create a faster implementation where, let's say, you have industrial areas that can be already implemented to the same, let's say, public vehicles, but gated areas, which would drive the autonomous operations all in all very much quicker to a level of industrial readiness.
So I put here Salo as gated areas. So do you think that we should have a specific infrastructure designed for AVs?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm a strong advocate of separating the infrastructure-based automated operations and vehicle-based autonomous operations. So a lot of times the autonomy is thought to be presented only within a vehicle, not as a holistic system. And I suppose that in the ports section, you might have discussed this topic, where the port itself is an area which is doing a function instead of a crane or whatever equipment that needs to be, let's say, doing the decisions. So the orchestration and everything is on a different level than a single vehicle basis.
Perfect. Anyone else? I also see here some comments coming from Lucia, which is saying on the raising awareness part, promote training to the general public and workers about CICAM to reduce aversion to technology deployment, also quite aligned with what Guillaume mentioned. Zilko from Einride. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Really interesting discussion. I don't fully agree, and I don't fully disagree, but I don't fully agree that we need to have separate infrastructure for autonomous vehicles. To the best of my knowledge, most of the people that are working, including us, on automation are working on mixed case scenarios because we can simply not afford to have another set of infrastructure. So it's just too expensive. On the other side, if you look at what is the challenge with the mixed traffic, it is the unpredictability of the human drivers. On some sites where we are driving or some public roads where we are driving, we see, for example, that people are not obeying the speed limit. And if the speed limit is 40, 50, 60 kilometers per hour and people are driving 90, then it's going to be very challenging to optimize your autonomous system to be able to manage even those situations. So you need to kind of create an over-complex autonomous vehicle and system, including infrastructure, in order to cope with that. So one of the recommendations that we are working with is basically, if you have stretches, sites, public roads, whatever it is, where we have mixed traffic, we need to make sure that speed limits are respected. So, for example, we would like to see a requirement that whichever road is adjusted for autonomous vehicles, it does need to be separate infrastructure, but place, for example, speed cameras. so that you see also if the human drivers are overspeeding or not behaving according to traffic rules. And I think we can do much more of these points along the road.
And should the speed be the same actually for autonomous vehicles as well as human-driven vehicles? Because I put here in raising awareness part, make sure that people actually respect the speed limits. On infrastructure side, I've put speed cameras, which is related to infrastructure. But on regulation side, do you think we should have the same speed limits for autonomous vehicles as well as human-driven vehicles if we don't have specific lines for them?
I don't see why not. Because also if you look at, for example, I take example of Sweden, and we are quite extreme in some ways. We have 70 kilometers per hour roads that are public for all human drivers, and currently also for autonomous vehicles for those manufacturers that would like to drive there. At the same time, we have these special kind of vehicles for young people that can be driven up to max 30 kilometers per hour. And they're driving on these 70 kilometers per hour roads. So already today with human drivers, regulations is allowing people that are driving 30 kilometers per hour on a 70 kilometer per road. So 70 kilometer per hour limitation is not a requirement that everybody has to drive 70 kilometer per hour, but that is the maximum speed. And I'm perfectly fine with that we say, well, fine, even for autonomous vehicles, it's 70 kilometers per hour. But if you drive in a speed that will cause an accident, you as a manufacturer or operator of those vehicles will be liable for the accident.
So you're already highlighting something related to regulation, which is actually manufacturers or operators should be reliable for any damage, right?
Oh, definitely.
Anyone who agrees or disagree?
I agree. And I just wanted to say that, it depends on who you want to trust the most. So if it's autonomous vehicles or people, considering that autonomous vehicles can be out more, it's a difficult topic. Like your question can be probably something we can discuss about for hours, because people can drive up to 70 kilometers per hour, or can do even more, and there's no control on them unless we use vehicles that don't allow them to really go over that. So what I think is that what we should do is to adapt the infrastructure that we already have to the autonomous vehicles and to a new world where actually we trust autonomous vehicles as much as we do with people. But as Cormac was saying, we probably may trust vehicles more than people. But that's, as I said, something to discuss.
But
for
Flavia, when it comes to infrastructure, you're saying we have to adapt the infrastructure.
Yeah.
What exactly we should do to adapt the infrastructure? What needs to be actually installed, or what needs to be changed in the infrastructure to make them?
For example, using CITS all over the roads, because if you don't have a system that controls what's happening in the system, basically you lose control of the vehicles that are in the system, while you have to have an infrastructure that monitors what's happening in the infrastructure itself. So with cameras, with sensors, and with information that can be detected both by human drivers and autonomous vehicles, so that the information is shared at the same time in real time by all vehicles and humans. You have to imagine a world where of course, information is shared. So there is no human being in an autonomous vehicle that sees what's happening, but there has to be an infrastructure on the basis of that allows them to know what's happening. So of course, the infrastructure has to be adapted.
Perfect. Mads. Yeah, the comment.
This is sort of a thought on what Selko, and I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, but I think one of the issues when talking about AVs in logistics. We need to change our mind as a logistics operator when we are introducing AVs into our fleet. I think at Enlight, they are autonomy and electrification first. In BFDS, we've been operating trucks for years, and then our setup is based on current standards and KPIs. So we will most likely have a tendency to compare performance of the vehicles and our logistics networks based on current standards. And we need to change our minds when we are adopting AVs.
So should the standards should be changed, Mats, as well? I mean, I put like changing mentality as logistic operator on the raising awareness part, seeing actually this as a change management within entities. But you were saying we're using the existing standards. Does it mean that the standards should be changed? Adapted maybe, or modified?
I think I don't have a clear answer, Loha, to be honest. I think it's about it's a change of mindset in the companies when they're deploying this technology, because we're not gonna be able to, at least on the short term, maybe reach the same efficiencies. We don't have the same flexibility, and that's sort of something we need to get our head around. And how do we do operations then going forward?
Mm-hmm. I saw also Selco's hand raised, but I'm not sure if it's from previous round or it's still. You wanted to mention something? Oh, you're muted, Selco. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things that I forgot earlier. So I fully agree with Mads, and I think he's more referring to operational standards and what they internal KPIs as a transport provider. And I fully agree with him as well that it is not just straightforward, even though in the end we want to have autonomous vehicles replacing and even making better the transports, but it's not a straightforward process. But what I want to comment more on was these things, what do we need more from infrastructure? As I see it, I already mentioned the speed cameras as one infrastructure requirement. The second infrastructure requirement is really traffic lights at key locations, because unprotected left turns are a nightmare for anybody who is trying to do autonomous operations on public roads. Again, you need to do a lot of calculations, a lot of sensing, etc. And these things could be solved by having intelligent infrastructure like traffic lights with CITS as an example. That said, this should not be now a requirement to all authorities throughout the entire Europe implement traffic lights at every single intersections or crossing. No, this should be more focused where there is interest of transport companies, autonomous vehicle providers, etc., to drive on certain stretches. Make sure that those certain stretches are equipped with traffic lights, so that we avoid unprotected left turns, because they are the biggest headaches that the industry has, not only us but everybody.
Yes, I've put like traffic lights in key areas, and then I add in a sticky note saying where there is the most interest from industry.
Thanks.
Perfect. I also see Cormac.
Hi, just one thing that's being completely left out of discussions is the mandatory requirement for all vehicles to be autonomous. Like we've mandated for all vehicles to be electric. So it's really left out of road safety discussions, and it's going to be the number one thing to prevent road accidents is autonomy. So I would like to get it in discussions that all vehicles must be in autonomous capable by 2030. And we should set the date for all vehicles to be retrofitted there's already aftermarket devices that you can buy, the likes of the Comma AI that can turn your vehicle into autonomous on motorways. So I really think we should have our motorways compulsory autonomous by 2030.
That is
That
quite
is-
an interesting
It's
insight.
quite soon, but I agree with you. I mean that in the future, I imagine what you're saying, but probably will be by 2050.
I mean, it's 6 years away.
Yeah,
It's
2030.
that's quite a long time in technical development. I mean, the technical development that's going to
Don't
happen in
think,
the
yeah,
next 2 years
I
is
agree.
going to be exponential. Never mind
But
in
yeah,
2030.
Greetings from a classic Porsche here. I would like to have a autonomous driving of my classic daily. So I think that's going to be a little bit, as public, would be a little bit opposing to it.
Well,
technology, exactly.
let me query to why you like your Porsche, because you like driving fast. And as I said in my comments there, I think you will be able to drive much faster when all vehicles are autonomous. So Autobahn speeds may be possible on all European roadways in a safe manner.
Minor detail. Greeting from Finland, where we have the most crucial or most rigid taxation on driving on speeding tickets.
Yes, 150,000 is not uncommon to be heard of.
Okay, we also see
if
more
I may
and
suggest a compromise.
yeah.
Sorry. Could we? I mean, this is an interesting discussion in the sense that this affects more than just business interests. So I think perhaps we can, instead of talking about mandatory anything, perhaps there should be at least a step-by-step approach to this with benchmarks that are similar to what the EU is doing with the Green Deal, for example, so that we say a certain share of automobiles should be at a certain level of autonomy, because there are at least two moving parts here, no pun intended, when we talk about cars, or vehicles, that it is the level of autonomy that we're talking about that is worth debating, and it's also then the amount of vehicles, or the perhaps use case dependent vehicles, that we should talk about.
And I think
And that's why
also
I suggest that motorways might be the best place to start that mandatory driving.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then you might find some local folks who would argue that we've already made quite a good amount of progress on sort of last mile delivery options as well, which are, urban environments. So yeah, there's definitely discussion to be had. I also wanted to throw in a couple of other issues that haven't been talked about as much, and one of them is data. So when we talk about regulations or standardization, I think data standardization is key. And related to that are issues of both cybersecurity and privacy.
So what should be done exactly, Olger?
So number one is so in terms of cybersecurity, I think what the EU right now is doing with the AI Act and the risk-based approach is perfectly fine. I think that needs to be. I think there needs to be perhaps a little bit more consideration to autonomous vehicles, because right now when we talk about AI-based risks, we're thinking about things like generative AI and not so much everyday use in business operations related to logistics. I'm not even sure if the word vehicle appears in the AI Act. I haven't read the current draft yet, or the latest draft yet. And then the second thing about privacy is simply that from a regulatory perspective, it is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to force private businesses to reveal data that endangers their business model. So I think there need to be some limitations on what constitutes requirements to share data or open access or things of that nature.
I think another important aspect to suggest to the EU is to consider who is going to control the autonomous vehicles. In that world that we are imagining, where all vehicles will be autonomous. So another very important aspect is who controls this. Because of course
will it be an AI?
No, well that's another thing, but it should be somehow related to the municipality, to the government, to local government. And at that point, you also should think about share these vehicles and not have only one person per vehicle and these kind of issues.
Do you mean, Flavia, distribution of control? So it's not just AI?
Yeah, I mean distribution of control, and I also mean general control. So even also like a central control of all autonomous vehicles. Because in my view, in future, autonomous vehicles should be somehow shared by people so that there is an organization behind them that sends an autonomous vehicle to a person to go from A to B, and the same autonomous vehicle will be sent to another person to go from B to C. This means that there has to be somebody behind the autonomous vehicles that knows where each autonomous vehicle has to go. And only at that point, we can say that autonomous vehicles will be also environmental friendly. If you look at an autonomous vehicle as just a vehicle that is associated to one person, and this person continues to go from A to B whenever it wants, you're not increasing the environmental friendly option of these autonomous vehicles. So you have to think to these vehicles as a whole system that is regulated by somebody that really wants to optimize traffic and reduce traffic. And in order to reduce traffic, you can only share autonomous vehicles. Otherwise, you will always have one vehicle per person, and you will not reduce the whole traffic of the whole system. That's why I think
now kind of
the control is general.
Exactly. Now going back to logistics, well, that is the main actually focus of today's discussion, because when we talk about passenger vehicles, that's completely like broader area, and of course lots of things need to be done, including lots of recommendations suggested here. Cormac, I think you had another suggestion or recommendation.
Well, just I want to highlight what I said earlier on about EU competition rules. So EU competition rules dictate that you cannot prevent a service from operating in an EU country. And I do know of one particular operator that is already going to use this as their case for deployments throughout Europe. And that will limit both local and state authorities on what they can and can't actually regulate for competition reasons. So it's anti-competitive. So, and I do think we need to learn a lot of lessons from what happened with Uber and car sharing and ride sharing, and how we're going to deploy and this applies to logistics as well, because there's a lot of logistics companies that are just not going to be able to compete with AVs and will just go wallop overnight, and that's.
Can I say that we have to put more restrictive anti-monopoly laws on AV manufacturer providers or companies? So that we don't have another Uber, like just one Uber actually controlling all AVs, maybe in logistics? Is it what you mean?
It wouldn't be what I mean. Like I'm more looking at like the likes of Germany that is really hindering autonomous driving and slowing it down. And I think the only way to tackle that is through the EU competition rules.
Roads you mentioned, or roll? EU competition?
Rules.
ROAD?
So you can't deny a company from operating in Europe.
Rules. Okay. Rules, I think. EU competition.
I think rules, yeah.
Rules.
Rules, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. People who have not actually talked and you have been quite silent, raise your voice. I see actually here, at least on the board, going quickly. Julian, any recommendation? Matthias, I'm just going one by one.
Yes, so actually what I put in blue on the cards, on the regulations, is just narrowing down and saying that for especially the autonomous truck or truck platooning even, we should have cross-border regulations. So in trucking, you know that it doesn't stop at a border. So typically you have cross-border routes, and that's something even if you have a look at the European Truck Platooning Challenge in 2016 or the follow-up Ensemble project, these are lessons learned where actually we need regulations so that the manufacturers that actually have some kind of technology in place so that they are willing to create products and bring products to life, which are then deployed across Europe. And that's something, at least from my point of view, we as Europe should also foster. But again, here you have the discussion with, for example, railways that say, okay, we actually want to foster modal shift and not only strengthen the roads. So there is the fear that then again the roads is more prominent and that the modal shift doesn't get further attention. So this is also a bit of a political discussion, but in terms of autonomous vehicles, I would like to see some kind of cross-border regulations in this direction.
Any specific regulation suggestion, Matthias?
That we need a harmonized regulation for cross-border autonomous trucks or truck platoons for this specific use case.
Perfect. Then also connecting it to standardization, right? Like harmonizing, coming up with the standards that can be actually applied.
Technology-wise, the Ensemble project actually said that multi-brand truck platoons, for example, they defined a technology standards that each and every truck of different manufacturers is able to communicate to each other and to form a platoon. So there already has been some kind of standardization, but maybe it's, I didn't see it, but I have the feeling that this is something which is not that prominent at the moment on the European level. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
Perfect. I'm going quickly through other people. Rebecca, you're the next person on the board. Do we have Rebecca with us? Some people actually left. Yes. Rebecca, any recommendation to EU?
Nothing on top of what was being said. To be honest, I'm not really clear about what the EC can actually do anyway. Like I'm not completely clear on what's in their power, so I find it difficult to make recommendations.
Okay, and no worries. Runer, do you have any recommendation? Do we have Runer with us?
Yes, I'm here. Not specific regulation, but just a follow-up to the cross-border issue, which is a very important thing, but it's also more generic question when the AV is leaving one governance area and into another governance area, for example, to a port or a terminal from a public road and vice versa. And also the communication with the authorities on the public roads. Need some interfaces there for how, for example, the police interact with the vehicles and so on.
So you also believe that the European Union also should foster the communication between, for example, other entities, even public players such as police with autonomous vehicles? Is it related to infrastructure?
It's not only police, but also traffic management measures and so on to make the automated vehicle adjust according to the traffic management measures.
So they should actually kind of make sure that the companies, the manufacturers, they develop autonomous vehicles that can communicate with other infrastructures around them.
I'm not sure if it's the vehicle that communicate with the infrastructure and the authorities, or if it's the fleet management system for the automated vehicles.
Okay, I see. So so there should be a technology that communicates with the infrastructure, and based on the information that they get from the infrastructure, then they can. But is there something that EU can actually do, like force people or maybe oblige them to do something?
Probably need to be some standards and regulation in place, yes.
Do you want the authorities to have the capability of being able to take over control of a vehicle?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I might foresee that at least they can force it to do a minimum risk maneuver.
Yeah. So
for example, to check the tires and the load and so on.
Yeah, one of the problems was with the police interacting with the autonomous vehicles in San Francisco was it was too time consuming in an emergency situation.
But if then the police can interact with AVs and there is an accident or a damage, who is responsible? The police who took over the car manufacturer or the operator?
Shared responsibility, as always.
Okay, let's quickly go through other people's ideas, recommendations. I don't know what is truthful, Toucan, but it's, I would say, let's see if I see some. I don't actually, there are some anonymous people in the on the board, so just unmute yourself if you have to say something. We are almost like closing the session. We have got 8 more minutes left. So I would rather actually kind of hear some thoughts from your side. You're always actually criticizing countries and regulators not allowing us to do things. So I would say this is a nice place to raise our voice. I'm not sure that actually they will, of course, they will read the report, but I'm not sure they will do everything that we suggest. But at least they can see actually what people are thinking, at least the ones who have been in such research projects, such as PoDIUM and award. What are our recommendations to us? What they should do? We have already lots of nice insights. Anyone else who would like to add something?
So this might be a little general, but I think right now we're looking at a situation where in many cases the technology has outpaced regulations. And I think it might be worth the EU's time to perhaps perform a legislative scan across all of its current regulations regarding transport, or more specifically logistics or freight. I'm thinking about things like combined transport rules, intermodal transport rules. And the general question or the general request to the EU could very well be to think about how any of these regulations can be updated to incorporate autonomous vehicle technology, because I'm not sure whether that effort has been made to the extent that it's now necessary. Because we continue to say that technology is improving with a more or less accelerated pace. We can't say the same about the regulatory frameworks.
Okay, anyone else?
The regulations just aren't dynamic enough.
Regulation is not dynamic, so make them more dynamic.
Mm. With technological developments.
I haven't seen actually any suggestions for the sandboxes that have been provided for some financial, for example, technologies. I'm not sure if providing like sandboxes for AV deployment can be an idea to have, you know,
I do know the European Investment Bank is considering it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be an avenue to seek funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so far we only have national rules. So individual member states have done this, but not the EU yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another question. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was one of the complaints about competing with the IRA, and that companies are actually leaving Europe and going to the US where they are getting federal funding. There, at the moment, there is no kind of European-wide funding for investment in projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the Horizon funding is just not sufficient either.
I've just put more funding and investment for projects.
Like we're in the US, they're talking billions. We're still talking millions.
I totally agree with you. I think there are a lot of funding. There is a lot of funding, like for decarbonization or the horizon, but things with related to technology or autonomous, I think we're still very behind.
Mm-hmm. Any more thoughts? Any specific standards or anything specific related to standards? I have here a standard related to charging and related technology, related to road marks, traffic.
Again, it's so dynamic that it's changing all the time. So what technology might be good this year might be gone next year.
So that's true. And that is why actually regulation is not, I mean, it is not able to
keep up.
Catch up with the technology pace.
And back to, we don't have a goal either.
A leadership. Is it related?
Like what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to save as many lives on European roads? Are we trying to improve logistics? Are we trying to improve the environment? Like what's the number one priority with transport?
I put it leadership and defining clear goals. I would also write defining priorities.
Yeah, I think this speaks to the social aspect as well. We don't want to be in a situation where we implement technology for the sake of implementing technology. It needs to be based on solving a problem. And so the definition of the problem and the identification of the right technology as a solution is sometimes, I think, neglected.
I have actually one, let's say, question that I think then might lead to some considerations. When you mentioned, Laura, sandboxes, what exactly did you mean? Because, I mean, I could have an idea of one possible solution. I'm not sure where that would go. Maybe, yeah. But for instance, like, since, of course, there's a lot at stake when you use autonomous vehicles, like for instance in terms of safety and so forth, then maybe it might be worth it to test them in, let's say, risk-free environments, like of course in real life, like it could be the private grounds of the companies, but also maybe to train the algorithms behind in simulated environments where you sort of like try out as many scenarios as possible, as many things that come to mind as possible, so that then you have already solved them in a way, or like at least consider them before then you put them on the road. Because I think if there is one thing that hinders some of the points that we have here, is the fact that reality is always more complex than what you imagine on a regulative stage. And therefore, yeah, I guess the more things you can try out beforehand, the better. So that could be, for instance, an idea for a sandbox.
For me, here, really with the sandbox, I mean that the European Union should start actually allowing companies to sell some units, you know, and then we try them really on public roads and really learn by, I mean, that's really the risk taking, you know, capability of EU, saying there might be actually accidents, but based on specific KPIs that you put for those companies, for sure you might minimize those risks. But if we completely actually do not allow any company to sell any vehicle, then we will not actually catch up with China, for example, or with the US, where they are providing this gray area, you know, like these sandboxes where, okay, you cannot, for example, sell more than 100 units. But then companies that are interested, or people who are interested to buy 100 units, then we can see actually how it behaves. So it's not from 1 month to another, we don't have 1,000 vehicles already on the road. We have probably 5, 10, but we see them in real life, actually, how it really works. There might be accidents, but then we can actually quantify how many accidents. We can also see how people behave, etc., etc. With those sandboxes, I really mean like the same as, for example, in finance, limiting, like putting really limitations. I don't know what those limitations should be. Putting limitations, but allowing at the same time, you know, the companies in order to be able to commercialize, to deploy them. Also, people trying, or companies trying those vehicles. I see that we are running out of time. It was really, really constructive. I got lots of actually inputs from everyone. Do feel free also to send us your insights through email later on. If you come up with any more inputs that can be included in the report, the idea would be that we collect all these insights from you and then put them together in a report that will be public. Hopefully in few months, you will actually get access to everyone's insights and inputs, and you will be reading the report. But before the report is published, also we encourage you to send us any inputs that you might have. But most of all, thank you so much for the time. It was 3 hours, lots of inputs, lots of insights, and I know everyone is quite busy, so I really, really appreciate the time that you dedicated to the workshop. Have a great day, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.